Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Wednesday webinar, deviating from our usual Thursdays, on creating output sheets using Multiplot Report Builder. So I'm Erin, our resident sort of webinar host, and with me I've got our training manager, Matthew Dickey. So we are going to spend the next 45 minutes talking about how you can better communicate your road design project that you've designed in RoadEng using Multiplot. I did just want to start by wishing our American clients and attendees a wonderful Thanksgiving long weekend. I know that's why we've moved today's webinar to a Wednesday, so happy Thanksgiving to all of you those celebrating over the next couple days. So in terms of what we're covering, I do want to just start with a little bit of an introduction to Multiplot, as well as discuss some of the common mistakes made using the tool. And then I'm going to pass it over to Matt. We're going to get an example loaded up, and we're going to show you how to work with Multiplot Report Builder using both things from our eLibrary as well as sheets that you create yourself. Finally, we will also be including, for those of you interested in learning more, a couple exciting new features that we've added into version 11 inside of the Multiplot space. So we'll cover those as well. Okay, so to get started, so this is Multiplot. Multiplot is effectively a window within RoadEng, and it is our version, our way of creating customized printable output sheet. Multiplot itself can be customized obviously to your different page sizes and configurations that you need. It can include things like title blocks and logos. You can include views from any of your main windows, such as the plan view or a profile, or data tables, curve tables, and other sort of, I should say, items that you can use to help denote it further, like legends and scale bars and north arrows. We can also have many different types of multiplot sheets. So here's a section view that we've generated. And all of these different views, much like the rest of RoadEng, are updating dynamically as you design and make changes. They are connected to those main views that we design in. So all of your output sheets are updated as you go. You're also able to create sort of more basic ones like title pages. And we're going to show you how to do all of this within today's webinar. But first, as I mentioned, a little bit more of an introduction into sort of how Multiplot works. So Multiplot has a bit of a unique organizational structure. So we start with what we call the book level. A Multiplot book contains one or more chapters within it, and each chapter can represent its own page type, such as the title page we just looked at, a plan profile, or maybe even a cross section. And these chapters contain pages, and the number of those pages are controlled by something called the pagination settings, and we will spend a fair bit of time today discussing pagination and how it works. But the Coles notes on it, pagination is a combination of the length of your alignment, the scale that alignment is being shown at in the different views, and the method of pagination that you have selected. Also, new in version 11, you're going to notice that cute little pink sort of bookmark that we've got there on a page. So now these chapters within this organization structure can actually be designated to specific horizontal alignments. In version 10 and previous versions, if you had a main road and a spur road, for example, if you had those two items, you would have to create two different multiplot books. Now, within version 11, which is coming out sometime in early 2024, you're able to have different alignments attached to different chapters. And if you look over here on the sidebar, you can see that I've got Road 2 has its own section chapter included, for example, within this thing. Okay, we save the layouts for these different multi-plot organizational structures in two different ways. So you can save everything contained within a book, all the different chapters, and that is saved as a book layout file, which we gave the acronym or the extension as a BLT. Not a sandwich, but a layout file. So a book is a collection of chapters, and you can save that and reuse it. Could be saved and shared within your organization, or even just reused within a different project. So once you've gone through the effort of setting it up, it is fully reusable. And you can also save just a specific chapter as its own single layout file, and that is called a chapter layout file. And we'll take a brief look at those as well in our webinar today. So as I mentioned, there are a couple new version 11 features that we will highlight today that kind of fall within the multi-plot space. First of which are some changes in terms of how we can control our chapters and our pagination. We now have the ability to designate different horizontal alignments to a specific chapter. So you can have multiple road alignments all covered within the same book. We also have the ability now to control page numbering at the chapter level and the ability to skip different page numbers. The other kind of fun piece we have is what we call our rich text edit rectangle, which just allows you to have some greater formatting control if you're bringing in text or tables from another source. So my final sort of piece of introductory content, I did want to highlight some of the multi-plot mistakes that we most commonly see and we get a lot of support inquiries based on. So one of those is regarding scale. Often we'll see multi-plots that have a differing scale between their plan and profile. So that's something definitely to watch for, or multi-plots that use an unreasonable vertical exaggeration. In terms of the section layouts, we often hear, why is my culvert not showing on my page? And that is because they have excluded the culvert report points. So the section window is controlled by report points, and you do need to select to include them. The other thing we often see when it comes to cross sections is that there are too many of them and the frequency is really close. So Matt's going to demonstrate today how you can control what's being included within your section window in multi-plot. Labels, they're commonly seen to have overlapping labels or label text that is too small. Designs that extend outside of the view and how you can use something like manual scroll to adjust that, especially if you've got an awkwardly shaped road. We've got templates, and as I showed you, we can save our book template or our chapter template. But if you've set something up to be on a page-specific view or having up some really project-specific settings, just to be aware that when you're saving those templates, that they are going to be highlighted inside of the multi-plot with some different annotation in the corners. So either a green triangle to say that it's page-specific. So those are things to watch out for. Background imagery, remembering that there is a draw order when it comes to background imagery, as well as when it comes to printing, making sure that your background imagery has a high enough resolution to look good. We will show you how to use the lock functions. This helps you to avoid bumping other things within multi-plot. If you're like me and you spastically click every now and then, locking elements, even partially or fully locking, can really help to allow you to maintain that specific positioning in the layout. And then the final sort of common multi-plot mistake that we'll talk about or show you how to use today is dynamic text. So there are some fields within a text rectangle where you can have dynamic text, such as a page number or the date or even your design file. And we're going to show you how to leverage that within your multi-plot. So our brief little agenda for the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about creating plan profile sheets, cross sections, pagination, accessing the eLibrary to jumpstart your multi-plot, how to save and reuse these multi-plot templates for future designs. We'll include a quick little moment of how to export to Avenza, and we'll highlight those version 11 features. So from my dreadfully long introduction, Matt, I'm going to pass you the screen.
All right, excellent. All right, so where I'm starting from, we've got our design largely complete. We just haven't really given any thought yet to taking that design and putting it to paper. So obviously a pretty important part. I'm going to click this little icon down here, or I could go up here and click New Multi-Plot. But this opens up the portion of our software where we can format our document. So I'm going to work mostly in the multi-plot tab here. And first thing that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to make sure my page size is set to be the page size that I'd like to use. So 11 by 17 is what I want here. So that's great. And then I could, well, in practice, I would probably go open book layout and grab something that I've largely have formatted rather than reinventing the wheel. Or we could go over here and we could do the same for chapter. Or if we haven't already set up our own settings, but we'd like to get a jump start on things, we could go to the Access Web Library and we can bring in a chapter. So, and usually when I do this personally, I start with the plan profile, but I'm going to start with the cross-section chapter here. I'm not going to spend too much time focusing on it, but on the right here, we can see we've got our book, which is the holder for the total document that we have. We've got our chapters. So here I've got my chapter that I haven't formatted yet, and then I've got this other one that I've pulled in from the eLibrary with some cross sections being generated. And then I have the individual pages within. So rather than taking the easy way out and just using something that's been formatted, let's go back into this blank chapter and we'll start by, well, almost from square one. The one thing that I'm going to do here, and it's super useful, is you can copy and paste from chapter to chapter. So if I like what I have formatted down here for my title block in the chapter that I've just brought in, we can highlight that, we can hit copy, we can come over here and we can hit paste. So great, rather than having to add in a bunch of these individual items, we just saved ourselves a bunch of time. Now, one thing that Aaron mentioned very early on is, well, it's very easy to accidentally bump something, click and drag where you didn't mean to, and put that somewhere that you don't like. So if you are attached to the position of these and you don't want someone to get into your document and accidentally, including yourself, accidentally move something that you've spent time placing where you'd like, we can lock it. So I'm going to go locked position here. And now I can still, well, down here we've got some of that dynamic text that Aaron mentioned. We can still open it, we can format it, we can change it to be what we'd like, but we can't just click and drag and move it. Now, if we wanted to be able to not access it whatsoever, so if you were confident you didn't want folks to muddle with it, now if I just click that, I can't even open the settings to change that without first turning on edit locked items. So another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with positioning and keeping things where you'd like them is the idea of using a grid and snap to grid. I'm going to come up here, whoops, wrong spot. I'm going to click plan. So we're going to add our plan subview into our blank chapter. And if I'm going this route with things and trying to position it where I'd like, I'm probably not going to get it lined up very nice without using some kind of snapping. I'm going to double click outside of my subview. And I'm going to turn on, well, let's show grid, let's snap to grid, and let's set that grid to be 5 mils. So I'll zoom out a little bit. So I think that'll help make it a little easier to see. So we can see we've got a bunch of dots. And now when we move this around, it's going to jump to put our positioning in line with that. And we're going to line things up, use the grid lines to get things where we'd like. And I'm going to rename my chapter. So we've got our plan that I've just added in, and we'll do the same for our profile, and we'll add that in. Now, we're going to spend a bit of time positioning things. And one thing that I'm going to be careful of here is I want my profile and my plan to follow the same portion of the road. So with that, I'm going to want to make sure that my horizontal scale, or my scale for the plan view, matches the horizontal scale for my profile. And another thing that we're going to want to do, and we're going to talk about this more later, is we're going to just make sure that, well, here I don't want to just show a specific section of road. I'm going to use my plan over profile. I'm going to set a 10% overlap. And now it's following the appropriate portion of my plan over profile to show me where I'd like to be. And one thing that I will note here, as I go through this, I'm not going to worry about individual page formatting yet. So the reason I'm doing that is I'm setting this up to start. So once I've got the overall system settings the way I'd like, I can save it, and I can use that as a book layout template to use in the future. So we've got our plan over profile largely in position. We're going to add in text rectangle. And here we're getting a warning, and it says, well, we're on a page, so it's only going to show up on a page. So what that means is this little piece of text that we've added is not added at the chapter level, so it's not appearing there on chapter 2. So we're going to get rid of that. We're going to go up here. So we're going to add it at the plan level, or sorry, at the chapter level. And we're going to say, we'll give it a title, change our font. Center it. We've got a bounding rectangle. And there we are. Next, let's add in, we'll do a legend. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the nitty-gritty stuff. My focus is going to be more just showing how things behave. So let's go in here. One, I don't want it in columns, so I've got the column layout options. We'll change our individual row height. We've got our title. Great. I'll go over to my items. And well, a lot of these lines I don't really care to call out in my different views. So let's remove that, plan culverts. So I'm just removing what I'd like to not have included. And of course, if I decide, well, I don't want that to be called plan L-line location, we can call it center line. And slope stakes, well, we don't want to differentiate it. We're using the same formatting for the different views. Road edges, culverts. And if we decided we wanted to change something like our bridge abutment, we could come in here and change the line work to deviate from what we have assigned. We can also add in data tables. So I'm going to go up here. We can either add in a curves table in the tables tab, or we can add in a data table. So I've got a data table here that I'd like to show. And we're going to control that. And there we are. And we'll pull this up. And then one of the items that Aaron introduced as being new is the idea of, well, being able to really easily work with rich text information. So here we've got something that I've just pasted into Word from an email. And we can come in here, and in version 11, we've got this rich text paste option. We can click that, and there we are. And we'll just move some stuff around here. And we'll notice as I shrink down the area that I have allocated for all my different views, how many pages are required are dynamically changing. So if we were happy with the way we had this, we could absolutely save it, and we could use it on our next project as a book layout. Let's just do a little more jigging around. And let's get rid of a bit of this just so we don't have to worry about that. And there we are. So I'm not going to spend too much time getting everything pretty, but that's the gist of it. We've got our pages inside a chapter, inside of a book. Now I'm going to switch over to this cross-section view that we have set up. And we are going to control, well, how frequently we see our cross-sections. So on this project, I've got a bunch of culverts. Some of these are landing in kind of weird positions. Let's highlight our cross-section subview. We'll click layout, and we can see, well, we've got every 5 meters and every 100 meters. Let's change this to be every 20 meters and everywhere that we've added a pipe. So 0, 20, etc. And then at 214.3, we've got our pipe arch that lands at a odd value. And we can continue along and we see what we're dealing with. If I was happy with this, this is where I would save this and use it as a template for future use. The next stuff that I'm going to get into is going to be kind of that project level configuration where you aren't going to want these individual settings as your starting point in the document. So with this, once we get in around station 420, I've got some fairly important stuff that I want to make sure is, one, visible and be able to see all of it. So we're going to format this to be different from station 420 to, let's go 640. So I'm going to hit this. I'm going to click duplicate chapter. And we are going to go in here and we're going to say, instead of taking our whole road and applying our cross-section templates to it, let's go to station 415. And then this next one, we're going to duplicate this again. But from 415 to 620. So 420 to 620. So we've got that stuff sectioned out that we can format independently. And then 640 on, we're going to keep it as is. And the reason I did that is now I can apply my chapter level edits to a specific section of road. And I can come in here and I can say, well, I just want 2 columns. And there it's a lot easier to see what we have going on. We get that context that we'd like, and we don't have to worry about those cuts and fills extending out past our document. So that is pagination. I should have done it before, but another thing that I don't know if we've shown a lot of, but we've got banding here now. So I'm going to go in here. I've got banding. I'm going to say, well, let's call this first band out as our point code. We're going to call our second one as our vertical offset. And we're going to add a horizontal offset here as well. And now we can really quickly at a glance see where all those different codes are landing without having to rely on a separate data table for the layout information. And we get the nice visual of lining things up. And with here, of course, we can format it. Now I'm going to get rid of the point code names, and we're going to shift this down a little smaller. And there we are. So of course, since I've split this up, I should have done that first. And when I duplicated it, they would have all stayed the same. Now, another thing that kind of at that individual project level edits that you might want to consider are things like moving around your different views. Let's see here. So this, in my plan view, right now, the software is working to position the road to show the bulk of it in the subview. Let's select this. So I'm at the page level. And I could go into scroll and I could turn this off and I could manually move the position of what we're looking at. But down here, we can also see it's telling us shift and arrow or control and arrow to scroll. So you guys can't see this, but I'm going to hold in the shift key on my keyboard and I'm going to use the arrow keys. It gives me a warning. And now I can move this around to focus more on what I'd like. And in this case, I was losing some labels in there. This page here is still set to auto, but page 2 right now, we can see this little icon in version 11 shows us that the scroll is no longer set to auto. So we can move things around that way. And then another kind of important aspect as you go through this and you're working with your document, folks will usually want to not have overlapping labels and whatnot. So one thing that we are going to do is we're going to look in here. So we've got ensure to maintain access with existing road. And in this view, where my north is going straight up, that's oriented the way I'd like. But in this view, we can see it's going up on an angle. Our north is no longer, well, our up is no longer north. We can show north arrow if we'd like. And there's a couple ways that we can manage around this one, or a few ways. One, we could just manually move that label around where we'd like. Two, we could set this to be based off of an absolute orientation instead of a model orientation. And then three, we'll do what I kind of prefer to do here, is we'll go down here, we're going to turn that to that. We see the rotation for this view set to 63. So edit label. I'm going to change the text to be 63, and I'm also going to flip what side of the line it's on there. There we are. So I've got the text oriented that way. I'm going to now just manually position it so my leader isn't going over that. And there we are. We are all lined up. The nice thing about doing it this way is since my plan view has some labels that are relative to the alignment and others that are not, I don't want to set it to absolute because it's hard to see how they're going to interact with one another. So by using the orientation of that view, makes it really easy to see where things will land and make sure it's lined up nice and straight. And we're gonna make that larger here. Another thing, we don't have to format these identical to the project that we're pulling from. So I've just turned off my backgrounds. If we want to just turn off a specific background, we can come in here and do that there. And lastly, I'm going to duplicate this plan over profile. This project, I have another alignment for it. So instead of, well, just going with the current, we're going to make this assigned to Irish Cove 1. We're going to make this attached to Irish Cove 1. And then down here, where I want this to be assigned to the other alignment in my project, I can just switch that over and away we go. So, and we are laughing. Yeah, so that's it. We've got a few minutes here for questions. Of course, my focus was more on where the buttons are. You can obviously make something much neater with just a modest amount of more time. And of course, by all means, you can start from scratch, or you can grab something that's already been formatted and using that as a jumping off point, as I just did there.
Okay, so while our webinar audience types their questions anonymously into the GoToWebinar question panel, I am just going to steal the screen for a second and highlight a couple small announcements. First off, just wanted to let everyone know, for those of you who have the capability to visit Vancouver or are in and around the British Columbia, Vancouver region, we have announced another training course. So if you're interested in learning about multiplot as well as resource road design and optimization in general, we have a 2 full-day course coming up January 25th, 26th. As well, if you have interest in accessing a beta version of 11 before it comes out, we've got the capability to, get you onto our beta testing list. So right now, it's just available for support subscribers that have Softtree Optimal. In December, we're going to be opening up the beta to all of our support subscribers. So if you're interested, you're welcome to, send us a note, reach out to our team afterwards, and we'll get you signed up on the list. That has generated a whole bunch of time for you guys to type your questions. So Matt, I'm coming back to you. First question, and feel free to steal the screen here, but can you create profile bands to show horizontal and vertical curves and super elevation?
Yeah, so yes, we can. I'm gonna move some stuff around here just to make it a little more. All right, and so if I want to add those bands, usually just below our profile, we can. And for the sake of just not having something super cluttered, I'm gonna remove my mass haul. So in my profile window options, we can click select. I'll remove my mass haul. And then we can come down here and let's add in a graphic for our horizontal curves, our vertical curves. And there we are. So this one is largely plug and play. We can see where our various features are. So straight lines being tangents, curves being curves, and we've got the different call out for the different items. If we want to add in the super elevation stuff, it's absolutely in there. It's a little less intuitive. Of course, I've got a resource road here which doesn't have super elevation applied. Bear with me. I'm going to add in something so we can at least see what we're wanting to see. So I've added in my super elevation. Quick sidebar, I've got the simple curves installed or panel showing. So that's I'm manually setting my super elevation. If I turned that off and went with the advanced parameters, we could look up our super elevation automatically from a lookup table. So we largely didn't have to think about it aside from just some checks. So we are near the end of our road here. And let's click select. We're going to go to our template parameters. We're going to go in here and set our options. All right, and we'll set that, and we'll change the line type a little bit here just to switch back and forth for us. And there's our graphic showing us the super that we have assigned. Let's go with something a little longer for our transition. So there we are. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes, absolutely we can. Another thing that is a bit of a sidebar, if we don't like the labels there, because they're overlapping things, we can turn them off. We're going to turn that off here. So this one is turned off. I'm going to look at this. So I've got the size, I'll set it to be based off millimeters. And we can add in that block right next to it. And we're going to
And while Matt's adding that text rectangle in, it's worth noting that green triangle that's included in that text rectangle. It's one of our common multi-plot mistakes. So if you add a rectangle on a page with a specific page selected, you're going to be creating what we call a page-specific element. So Matt's gone and taken that rectangle and pasted it onto the chapter, which means if it's on the chapter, it's basically like part of the entire chapter, and you'll see it on all the pages. So if you see a green rectangle, it's because in your book or in your chapter, you've added something on a specific page.
And just to reiterate some of the clicking around that I was doing somewhat quickly there, the couple easily overlooked items that I just did on the fly that make life a lot easier when you're formatting. If you want a certain portion of your profile dedicated for these sub-windows, we can set it here. We have the option to set it with, well, millimeters, percent, or inches. And what I did is, so it's nice and easy to line up my rectangle text boxes with those items, as I made them all in the same increments. So I'm using 5 mil grid, and I'm in increments of 5 mils. So it's really easy to line those up and have something that looks continuous as you're working along with it.
Let's move on to our next question. Can I set or save multi-plot format that I already used in a previous project?
Oh, yeah, totally. And yeah, so the whole document, and again, I wouldn't really do it here where I've already split out for some project specific stuff. But if I got rid of the, like my manual scroll, I could just go over here and hit save book layout, and then I could save it as a BLT, and the next project I could come over here and open it. Similarly, if I just want the chapter, I can save it and I can pull that in for a future project.
Okay, last question. How do you set which pages fall within and outside of a chapter when you duplicate it?
Okay. So I'm going to click duplicate chapter here. So this one was one that I've already signed that to. So a duplicate is just that. It's a carbon copy. So it's not going to change the station range throughout. So if I duplicated that and I knew I wanted to apply it for a different range, I would come in here after the fact and say, well, instead of going to 415, I want to go to 215. And now we've hemmed that in. So it stops, well, at the latest cross section that would be reported before that bound that we've assigned. So that's all it was, is just pagination options, station range. So ... being the start, or if it was ... on the other side would be the whole thing. And now we've got our whole road in this one chapter.
I feel like I'm just looking at our agenda. I feel like we missed one. Maybe we've got an extra second. Did we talk about Avenza, Matt?
Oh, no, we didn't. Won't take much. File, save as. So I guess if we want to print this, the obvious solution is file, print. Just a note, the system settings can deviate from the settings that you have set here. So if you want to configure that to match your page size, I've got a tabloid sheet here. I would do that first, and I'd hit file, print. But Avenza is really nice. Well, it's an app where we can take a document, and as long as it's been georeferenced, we can hit file, save as, change our format to be Avenza, name it whatever we'd like, hit save. We can choose what we are exporting. So if we want to just export the plan view, we can. Otherwise, we can go over here, click multiplot, and click OK. Now what that's going to do is it's going to take all the pages in your document and save them in a zip. And in the zips, the plan portion is going to be georeferenced, and you'll be able to see where you are at with a little blue dot as you walk around the woods or your construction site. or what have you. So it's really nice for field reviews, construction reviews, and just making sure things make sense. And it's a nice app as well to collect things like photos and notes and whatnot for documenting the process or documenting anything that you may not have caught in the first design side of things, maybe notes for geotechnical information, and go back and refine things.
And we'll include a link to how to import that from RoadEng into Avenza. We've got a little video, so we'll share that along with the webinar follow-up. So a little bit over time. Sorry, everyone. This one, I have to say, was prepared at the very last minute. We kind of forgot that we put this week's webinar on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. So apologies from the Soft3 team if we seem a bit disheveled. But we hope, all of our American clients, attendees have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks for attending today. And if you have any other questions, be sure to reach out to us, support.team@soft3.com, and we're happy to assist you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.